Today we have Peter Abbarno, the Republican candidate for the 20th Legislative District. Thanks for being on the program today, Peter.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Can you share a brief description of the size and territory of your district?
Sure. The 20th District is actually fairly large. It encompasses South Thurston County, Rochester, Grand Mountain, Ino, most of Lewis County, half of Cowlitz County, actually from about I-5 east, and then a small portion of Clark County and Woodland.
You are actually a very successful attorney and a busy, dedicated family man. The job of being a state legislator has always been one that requires a lot of time and sacrifice. It's a part-time job with full-time work. And now with COVID-19, it's going to be an even bigger responsibility. Can you share what's motivating you to become a state representative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the mayor pro tem here in Centralia. I'm also, as you mentioned, a husband and a father. I'm a business owner and I'm an attorney. And for me, I never really thought I would run for office. It was July 27, 2011, my aha moment, the birth of my daughter. And I remember looking in her eyes, this little baby, and saying, we can do better. And I remember growing up, and I grew up as a kid in Buffalo, New York, a brown field, high unemployment type community in the Rust Belt. And I remember my father saying to me, hey, why don't you just stay here? And that was before I left for college. And I remember saying to him, there's nothing for me here. And the hurt in his eyes. And I remember holding my daughter, thinking to myself, I'm not going to let her say that to me. At least I'm going to do my best to make sure I create a community where she can live, work, and then raise her own family. And that's what motivates me. It motivated me for my run for city council and my reelection in 2019 to city council. And it's also motivating me to run for the state house in the 20th.
And with this race recently in August through the primary, you got 47% of the vote. Can you share some of the public policy positions that make you different from your Democratic opponent?
Yeah, I was really proud to get 47% of the vote in a four-way race. And so my opponent is a Democrat from Toutle. And we differ on a number of different policies. One, I think experience. I work on city budgets that are $150 million. I've worked on large projects that aren't only limited to Centralia, but encompass a lot of Lewis County and the 20th District. Certain policy differences, my opponent supports universal health care. I believe that'll take access and availability of access away from a lot of people who like their doctors and want to keep their doctors. And I don't think universal health care is the solution to providing accessible and cost-effective health care. Some other issues, including taxes. My opponent supports a wealth tax. I don't think we need more taxes, whether it's a wealth tax or any other tax right now, when so many working families and small businesses are struggling. And the other is fines and penalties against real estate developers. In a time where we need more housing inventory, we should be encouraging smart growth. We should be encouraging growth that is not only for residential, but commercial across the board.
You mentioned more taxes, and essentially right now, Washington State is looking down the barrel of a rifle with $8.5 billion estimated in a state budget shortfall. It's going to require some kind of cuts and changes. As a state legislator, what are your plans to help prevent new taxes and to help get this back on track?
Well, first off, I join my candidate colleagues as well as future colleagues in the state legislature in calling for the governor to hold a special session. I don't believe that across the board 15% cuts is the right way. You should not be taking a chainsaw to the state budget. You need a scalpel. And you need to be able to cut while protecting the most vulnerable in our community. So first, I think it is essential that we have a special session. As a candidate, I get a lot of candidate questionnaires, and usually they try to stick you into one corner or the other. Do you support tax increases, or do you support cutting the budget? There's also a third option that needs to be explored, and that's growing our economy. In traditional recessions, the money's been sucked out of the economy. This is not a traditional recession. This is a economy that has money, but people don't have a place to spend it, especially on those people in the service industry. And so we need to open this economy up. We need to ignite this economy and really get it moving again. We have the engine. We just need to add the gasoline so that this engine can go. And so I think there's going to be cuts to the state budget, but I would caution cutting programs that are really essential to moving our economy forward. And I do not support increasing taxes or creating new revenue sources. The state budget's been increased 19% over the last 4 years. I believe there could be cuts without having to create new revenue sources.
You mentioned a special session. Do you have any opinion about why the governor has not called a special session so far?
To me, it's got to be political because I believe that there's an appetite amongst Democrats to increase taxes. And I think the governor knows that he doesn't want that to happen prior to an election. It's not popular to raise taxes right now. There are working families who are hurting, but a lot of that hurt is because the economy is not allowed to grow and expand right now. It's being held back by a lot of his emergency orders.
I'm going to switch gears here and move to another public policy topic, and that's early learning and childcare. Even before COVID-19, this was a growing concern amongst parents here in Washington state. I want to ask you two different questions that have to do with this. One, how has state government contributed to the lack of access to childcare, and what, as a state legislator, would you do to change it?
Well, first, to your first question, it's overregulation. Government wants to overregulate childcare. There needs to be safeguards to protect our children. Most certainly, background checks are one of them. But just like any sort of commercial or residential growth and development, they overregulate it and they stymie that type of development. Childcare, I'm a dad of a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. I'm a new granddad as well. Childcare is not easy to find. There's waiting lists, there's regulations on creation. So I think what government can do is help encourage childcare to privatize and grow, and kind of take a step back and say, look, we're gonna pass policies that make sure that our children are safe, but we're not going to overregulate the industry so that we can't have access, especially in rural communities, many of which are in the 20th district. As a state legislator, I'm going to continue working on what I'm working on now, which is a United Learning Center. In Centralia, the city of Centralia, the Centralia School District, United Way of Lewis County, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Discover Children's Museum, public and private entities have come together to create a group called the United Learning Center. And it's going to be a building that houses not only early learning, but childcare before, during, and after school care. And it's going to be a community center for families to come together in a safe way. Parents need access to childcare so that they can work. There was a recent survey by the Department of Commerce that I just read that said that 18% of parents have turned down a job due to lack of childcare. And in Lewis County, only 56% of kindergarten students are prepared to learn when they enter kindergarten. That is astonishing. And we need to address this issue at the local level. We do not need to measure childcare in these types of programs by how much money you spend. We should be measuring it by the long-term impact we have on graduation rates, how we get families back working, and how we take care of students who need a safe place to learn.
Peter, I mentioned earlier that you made it through the August primary. Can you share with people out there how they could support your campaign through the November election?
Absolutely. If you want to join my victory team and support my campaign, you can go to my website at electpeterabbarno.com. You could always send me an email as well at peter@electpeterabbarno.com. I'm always looking for people to support, whether it's lawn sign locations, yard sign locations, endorsements, and of course, donations. In a campaign year where, a lot of our campaigning used to be door to door, is now going to be paid advertising. The cost of campaigns is much higher to be able to get our message out that we can do better in Washington State.